Welcome back, it's Paul here from Hutt City Custom Cycles, and today we are talking suspension. And the biggest question to ask is the suspension worth it? Because we know that quality suspension is expensive, but the big question is it worth that extra money over spending maybe a little bit less on a brand such as Progressive suspension? Or is it even worth it at all? Is our stock standard Harley Davidson suspension just as good? Well, let's talk about that now after the break. I rode, as some of you know, 13,000 kilometers around the US. The suspension was adequate for the trip in America. The roads certainly over there were a lot smoother than back home in New Zealand. And I thought the suspension did a very good job, the front suspension especially. When I got home to New Zealand, I rode the bike a few miles away, went for a bit of a lunchtime blast, and also been on a trip to Palmerston North, which is about an hour and a half from Wellington. And I noticed straight away the New Zealand roads are absolute terrible. They are absolute crap. The stock suspension on the Harley Davidson certainly didn't do me any favours. I was getting bounced off my seat. I was uncomfortable, it was hard. I then would adjust it and it would to make it more comfortable, but then it was too mushy in the corners and felt really terrible. So when I went to harden up a little bit again, yes, it became harder, but it also became very uncomfortable, and the rebound was very, very quick. Therefore, it was bouncing me out of my seat as well. So I straight away realized very, very quickly after coming back from America that the Harley Davidson stock suspension on the 17 Road Glide is below adequate for New Zealand roads. Understand Harley Davidson, when they're producing stock standard shock absorbers like this on their Dyna models, Sportster models, things like that, the suspension is really only adequate for American roads. Always remembering that the rear is going to concentrate really on comfort more than performance. Yes, it definitely adds to your performance and handling, there's no doubt about that. But the front suspension is really more orientated around your performance and your handling, and the rear is more around your comfort. So the first thing we noticed when we removed the stock standard suspension off the Road Glide is we have this monstrosity. This monstrosity is your preload adjustable rear shock absorber. I don't know if you can see that, but there is all of about 1.5 to 2 inches of suspension travel, nowhere near enough. And whether on the soft setting, it was just blowing through the spring that was there and creating me to bottom out. And when it was set to hard, it was just like a rocket, actually bouncing me up and out of my seat, which I did not like at all. The other big thing you notice with the Harley Davidson suspension is that the eyelets are welded on, where in better suspension it is part of the casting or certainly billet. So the stock upgraded suspension on the touring models for Harley Davidson is adequate for US roads and absolutely nowhere near adequate for New Zealand roads. You just can't get the increment of adjustments like you can a performance suspension. Let's talk about upgrading this compared to the dollar. You can upgrade it with a set of Progressive suspension for, I'm guessing, probably anywhere between $400 and $800. How is the Progressive suspension compared to the Harley Davidson suspension? The Progressive suspension but it is catering to a budget. My recommendation is that you don't muck around. If you're going to do suspension, do it properly and do it once. Otherwise, you'll find that if you just go to the halfway mark, you are absolutely not getting good value for money. You may have well stayed at your stock suspension rather than wasting the $600 to $800 on a cheap set of aftermarket suspension. So this brings us on to what we sell, which is Legend suspension. As you can see here, the Legend shock absorber looks fantastic. We have billet tops, all machined, they're not welded on. And we have a spherical bearing in here, which allows a little bit of movement, which puts less strain on the top. The Legend suspension by far looks a lot better. You also have many increments of upgrading your preload here, which makes it stiffer or softer, however you like. These can be adjusted on the bike. You do not need to remove them and wind them down. You can actually adjust them on the bike. What we're finding with the Legend suspension, as fitted to my Road Glide now, you can adjust it nice and soft and comfortable for those bumps and when you're cruising, but it also stiffens up as you ride it hard, and the valving inside realizes that you are giving it hard because you're going through the spring, and it stiffens up the valving and makes it a much better performing shock, while also giving you the comfort that you require on the longer ride. So I'm straight away noticing I don't get bounced out of my seat. It handles through the corners a lot better, and it's definitely so much more comfortable to ride for long distances. So I can speak very highly for Legend suspension. It is made in America. It's all billet. They come with a lifetime guarantee, and they're just a very good suspension. So the big question comes, is it worth it? For a set of Revo suspension here, as we've got here, for a Dyna, we're looking at about $1,000 New Zealand. For the Revo A shock absorbers, which have a rebound adjustment, as on my Road Glide here, you're looking around about the $1,500 New Zealand mark. So that's a big difference between sort of the 1,000 to 1,200 mark to the 1,500 mark. So the big question we have to ask ourselves is, if you upgrade to a Öhlins or a Legend suspension, which I consider to be by far the best two manufacturers of suspension on the market for Harley Davidsons, is it worth spending that $1,200 to $1,500? Well, I can definitely say without a doubt that it is worth spending the $1,200 to $1,500, but only just. You definitely get $1,500 worth of value, but you don't get much more. So it is a purchase that you could maybe decide, I'll hold off. The Legend suspension and Öhlins suspension, which I can speak highly for, are premium suspension. You get what you pay for, but I highly recommend that if you're going to do this, you do it once and you do it right with a premium brand suspension like Legend or Öhlins. We are obviously a dealer of Legend suspension, and if you give me a call if you want a price on some Legend suspension for your bike, and you say that you've seen this video, I'll knock $100 off the RRP straight away. Thanks very much for watching this vlog. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Over the next few days I'm off for a ride up the North Island. I'm going to head over the Gentle Annie into Napier, then off to Gisborne, and then do a little bit of riding down there, around there. I'm just going to take a drone, my Mavic 2 Zoom, and I'm going to do lots and lots of footage just using a drone. That'll be interesting. So until then, safe riding, and we'll catch up with you next time. Cheers.